I was using telepathy to speak to my guardian angels and they to my soul. Um, I was a spiritual child back in the day with Reverend King, the March of the Children against Bull Connor. And these guardian angels want to know what was it like to be there when Reverend King gave that great speech. I was sitting there. I was a little child. I was part human and with my family, but I was spiritually there. It was a victorious day because we fought hard against Bull Connor and we fought hard for anti-segregation. So as I listened to him speak and I was looking at the thousands of people, man, and behind was that statue of Lincoln. Um, and Reverend King was saying, 5 score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree is a great beacon, light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who have been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still badly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. So we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds and the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of grandiloquisms. Now is a time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end but a beginning. Those who hoped that the Negro needed to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright days of justice emerge. And that is something that I must say to my people who stand on the worn threshold, which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negroid community must not lead us to distrust all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied with our destiny. They have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone, and as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their adulthood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing which to vote. No, no, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustices, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream. I have a dream that one day in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right here in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the south with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrims' pride, from every mountainside let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvilineous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from stone mountains of Georgia. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountains of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. When we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every city and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Great God Almighty, we are free at last. When I was at the podium as a baby angel, listening to Reverend King saying these words, oh my gosh, people, I was both crying and astonished, but not surprised, because Reverend King, he spoke to us, every individual, every angel in heaven was attentive on that moment, listening and watching in wow, like wow. And that's when we realized that when I found Reverend King in that modest little church, I made the right choice. It wasn't easy for him. He was not, full of himself, like a lot of preachers. He wasn't grandstanding. He wasn't raising the Bible and walking and speaking in tongues. He spoke from his passion, his heart, his conviction, his love of humanity, his love for his family. He spoke with the pain of knowing what his brothers and sisters of segregation were suffering. He didn't need to pick up a rattlesnake and say, tempt me not, for thou shalt not smite me, because of the blood of Jesus shall protect me. He didn't take out the mask and say, be damned, pandemic, I shall stand defiant. No, he put on the mask and said, I shall lead by example and follow by example. I know I'm stretching it a bit, but If he were human right now, he'd put on the mask and he would say, people, people, people. This is not an enemy that we can see in the armies of China or the armies of Russia or Iran. They are not attacking with planes and government-sponsored acts of war. This is a pandemic that exists inside of us, that hides in our nuts. You know, did you know that? It hides in the reproductive. It goes in there into the nostrils of our senses and takes away our sensibilities. Did you know that? It does. It attacks the respiratory, it attacks the most sensitive parts of our humanity, our lungs, our breathing. So when that black man said, I cannot breathe, it is just like the pandemic that had us by the throat. And only Congress has the power to empower the American people, not with $1,200 breadcrumbs to make Nancy Pelosi feel like she just accomplished something. Not to put a smile on the lips of Nancy Pelosi like the hero, she's the hero. No, $1,200 is breadcrumbs. It is a slap in the face of those who are fighting for their very existence. Over 100,000 dead, Nancy. Members of Congress, look at the numbers. You cannot send stimulus to 100,000 people, but you can tell them that they will not be joined by 100,000 more. People, 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 this is a pandemic that lives within us. It is our neighbor within. It is our squatter inside our brain, our respiratory, our nasal, our nuts. The loins of our nuts are screaming, we have been invaded. Get a microscope, Nancy, get a microscope. Mitch of the Senate, Republicans, Democrats. Get a damn stinking microscope, spend stimulus money if you have to. Oh, people, how much longer do we have to scream at Congress to empower Americans and let Americans empower the local economy? $2,000 per person is not going to incite laziness for 12 months. It is going to empower Americans to be great. It is going to empower the greatness of our capabilities. But if you can't see that, it's because you are blinded by your own corporate money, Congress. You are suffocated. You are stifled and suppressed, battered and shattered and tattered psychologically. You have been beaten down by all that corporate money, so you send more stimulus their way to say, thank you, corporate money. Nancy Pelosi wants more corporate money so she can buy more corporate ice cream. So she can go on TV and the heroes and put a big smile on her face says, we fought back. No, you fought against the American people. You suppressed us, repressed us, and oppressed us to the point that we have no streets to take but the streets that we live on. We have nothing to beat except the buildings that they torch and the cars that they beat up on. Congress, you walk around with corporate money blinding you because you can't hear, because corporate money is oozing out of your ears. Your brain is rotten to the core. The only thing you understand is corporate money. And that's why the stimulus is trillions of dollars going back to corporate money, because you feel it's recycling. The more you give to corporate, the more they give to you. Money you give to them. And the American people, $1,200 of breadcrumbs. They suffocate. You suppress your own people because you are prejudiced. You put your foot on the neck of the American people like the police officer on Floyd. This is what you are guilty of. That is a manifestation of what is going on with Congress and the stimulus. I hate to connect the dots, but it is true. The Senate and the Democrats have their neck upon us, and we are screaming, we cannot breathe. And they are only hearing corporate money and sending out $1,200 of breadcrumbs saying, I don't hear you. I don't hear you. And what do we do but take to the streets and burn down and loot? No, that is not the answer. The answer is going to Capitol Hill, multi-millions of you. Go to Capitol Hill. Instead of storming Area 51, storm Capitol Hill. That is what you need to do. Send a message through your unity. As you send a message to the police, send a message to Capitol Hill. Hear this. Ooh-rah! Ooh-rah! No greater words have ever been spoken than by the U.S. military. Ooh-rah! When they spoke after Saddam Hussein. Ooh-rah! Osama bin Laden. Ooh-rah! ISIS. Ooh-rah! No greater words can be spoken than the American people standing up and saying collectively to Congress, "Hoorah! Send me my stimulus, $2,000 per person for 12 months or else we will give you Joe Biden." And that is not just an idle threat. They may think they want Joe Biden, but they're also having things going on behind the scenes. Or they'll give you Donald Trump for 4 more years. If they really want to punish you, Trump or Biden, either way, Congress has to deal with the reaction of the people. 4 more years of Trump, if they really want to punish you. It's in the power of the people right now, people. Congress may not hear us and just say, that's all you're getting is $1,200. And we say, well, we're going to give you in this election either Trump or Biden. We'll give you Biden if you're the Republicans. We'll give you Trump if you're the Democrats. Think about it. Because my guardian angels, we think about it. And we are under the radar. So what are we going to do in this election? We're not telling you.